Mom, realistically, you are becoming a significant financial burden. The words, delivered by my son Michael in his calm, corporate presentation voice, sliced through the warm, festive air of Thanksgiving dinner like shards of ice. They hung there, suspended above the rapidly cooling turkey and glistening cranberry sauce, echoing in the sudden, profound silence. My son. The baby I had held. The boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged. The young man whose college tuition I and his late father had sacrificed for. 45 years of love and maternal devotion, and it had come to this. A PowerPoint presentation projected onto the dining room wall, usually adorned with my grandchildren's artwork, detailing the rising costs of my prescription heart medication and arthritis treatments. He clicked through slides showing copay percentages, potential long-term care expenses, and the inadequate reach of Medicare. The conclusion, delivered with the detached precision of a quarterly earnings report, was that I should sell the house. The house my beloved Robert and I had poured 40 years of our lives, savings, and sweat equity into building. The house where Michael himself grew up. The house filled with the ghosts of laughter and love. I stared down at my plate, the carved turkey suddenly looking gray and unappetizing. A single tear escaped, tracing a hot path down my cheek, before landing with a silent splash next to a dollop of untouched mashed potatoes. My daughter-in-law, Lisa, ever supportive of her husband's ambitions, chimed in with practiced concern, her voice smooth as butter yet sharp as glass. And Eleanor, dear, we have to think about the children's college funds. Emma and Ryan deserve the best opportunities, and frankly, the costs associated with, well, with your ongoing care, they do add up. She patted my hand, a gesture meant to convey sympathy, but feeling more like a proprietorial claim. No one else at the table, Michael's cousins, my own sister visiting from out of state, met my gaze. Eyes were fixed firmly on plates, silverware scraped uncomfortably against china. No one spoke up. No one questioned the cruelty, the sheer, breathtaking callousness of turning a holiday meal into an ambush, an intervention designed to divest me of my home and, it felt, my dignity. In that single, heart-stopping moment, surrounded by the family I had nurtured, I realized a devastating truth. To them, I was no longer Eleanor Winters, mother, grandmother, widow, woman. I was a line item on a spreadsheet, a problem to be managed, an asset to be liquidated. If you are listening to this story, thank you so much for being here. Let us know where you are joining us from in the world, and do not forget to subscribe to become part of our growing community. Later, feigning a need to rest, I excused myself from the strained dessert course, Lisa's perfect pumpkin pie, tasting like ash in my mouth. I went upstairs to the guest room where I had left my coat and handbag. My movements felt strangely detached, robotic, as if observing myself from a distance. My hands, usually so nimble with needle and thread, despite the encroaching arthritis, felt stiff and clumsy as I retrieved my keys and wallet. My gaze fell upon a framed photograph on the bedside table, a snapshot from last summer's family barbecue. Robert grilling burgers, his familiar grin wide. Michael standing beside him with an arm slung casually around his shoulder. Lisa smiling brightly, the grandchildren, Emma and Ryan, making faces at the camera. Robert had been gone only 3 years, taken suddenly by a massive heart attack that had ripped the sturdy fabric of my life apart. With trembling fingers, I carefully unhooked the picture from the wall, slid it from its frame, and tucked the image deep inside my handbag, a tangible piece of a past that felt increasingly remote. From downstairs, I could hear the low murmur of voices, Michael's confident tones dominating as he presumably discussed suitable assisted living options, and the potential listing price for my house. Wiping away the fresh tears that threatened, I straightened my shoulders, smoothed the fabric of my good wool coat, took a deep, steadying breath, and walked quietly down the stairs and out the front door into the cold November night. I did not look back. I did not say goodbye. Life after Robert's death had been an adjustment, of course, a profound, aching adjustment. We had been partners in every sense for nearly 50 years. He was a structural engineer, steady and practical, the perfect counterpoint to my more artistic temperament. I had taught sewing, pattern drafting, and textile design at the local community college for 30 rewarding years, retiring a bit earlier than planned to care for Robert during a difficult illness a few years before his heart finally gave out. Our home, a modest but cozy brick rancher in a quiet Denver suburb, was our haven, the place we raised Michael, hosted countless neighborhood potlucks, and planned our future together. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable thanks to careful saving, Robert's pension, my own retirement account, and a life lived without extravagance. After Robert died, Michael, my only child, had stepped in immediately, full of filial concern. Too much concern, perhaps, in retrospect. He insisted on helping me sort through the complicated paperwork, the insurance claims, the wills. "Mom, you're grieving. Let me handle the financial stuff," he'd said, presenting me with documents to sign, including, I now realized with a sickening lurch, papers granting him power of attorney and adding his name to the deed of my house as a joint tenant with rights of survivorship. "Just for emergencies, Mom. To make things easier if anything happens to you." Lost in the fog of grief, trusting my son implicitly, I had signed where he indicated, barely reading the fine print. Over the past 3 years, his attitude had subtly shifted. The initial solicitousness gave way to a growing impatience. Gentle suggestions about downsizing became firmer pronouncements about practicality, and his visits often coincided with thinly veiled inquiries about my spending habits or the house's maintenance needs. I knew I wasn't the spry 70-year-old I once was. The arthritis in my hands, a cruel irony for someone whose life revolved around fine motor skills, made intricate sewing more challenging. My heart condition required daily medication and regular checkups, but I was far from incapacitated. My mind was sharp as ever. I managed my own appointments, cooked my own meals, tended my small garden, and participated actively in my book club and a weekly quilting group. I was managing, living independently, cherishing the home filled with memories of Robert. But clearly, in Michael and Lisa's eyes, managing wasn't good enough. My independence was inconvenient. My presence in my own home was an obstacle to their financial planning. Michael, my ambitious boy, always driven, always wanting more. He had done well for himself, climbing the ladder at a large financial services firm. He had the big house in the newer, more prestigious suburb, the imported SUV, the expensive golf club membership. But Robert and I always suspected he lived right at, or perhaps slightly beyond, the edge of his considerable income. There were always hushed, tense phone calls between him and Lisa about bills, whispers about credit card debt that I wasn't supposed to overhear during my visits. Lisa, who worked part-time in real estate, seemed perpetually dissatisfied, always comparing their lifestyle to that of wealthier neighbors, subtly fueling Michael's anxieties and ambitions. Slowly, insidiously, I had transitioned in their minds from beloved mother to manageable asset, and now, apparently, to disposable liability. The Thanksgiving dinner wasn't just a callous remark. It was a premeditated ambush. Michael had come prepared not just with turkey carving skills, but with a laptop and projector. He presented his case with graphs and charts, analyzing my prescription costs, projecting future medical needs based on actuarial tables, highlighting the gap between potential expenses and my fixed income plus Medicare coverage. He spoke about the rising property taxes on my too large house, the potential costs of future home modifications I might need. He concluded by proposing the sale of my home, suggesting the equity released could fund a comfortable placement in a very nice, highly rated senior living facility he had already researched, complete with brochures he conveniently produced. Lisa nodded encouragingly throughout, interjecting comments about the grandchildren's future needs, framing the entire proposal as a sensible, loving solution for everyone involved. The silence from my sister and Michael's cousins felt like tacit agreement, or perhaps just profound discomfort and an unwillingness to intervene. It didn't matter which. The message was clear. I was being pushed out, my life rearranged for their convenience. As I drove home that night through the quiet, darkened streets, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, the shock began to recede, replaced by a cold, clear wave of resolve. Tears still burned behind my eyes, but they were tears of anger now, not just hurt. I would not cry. I would not plead or argue or cause a scene that would only reinforce their narrative of me as an emotional, irrational old woman. But I would not be steamrolled. I would not be discarded like a worn-out piece of furniture. I would not let them erase me from my own life. The next morning, bypassing my usual routine, telling no one of my plans, I drove straight to the downtown branch of my bank, the one Robert and I had used for decades. I bypassed the friendly tellers I knew by name and asked to speak directly to the branch manager. I needed to review the activity on the retirement account Michael had so helpfully offered to manage for me since Robert's death. What I discovered in the stark black and white of the printed statements didn't just confirm my burgeoning suspicions, my worst fears. It ignited a fire within me, forging a plan my dutiful, financially astute son could never have conceived from his burdensome old mother. The bank manager, Mr. Henderson, a kind man who remembered Robert well, looked increasingly grave as we went through the statements line by line in his quiet office. Over the past 2 years, coinciding almost perfectly with Michael's purchase of a new luxury car and an extravagant family vacation to Hawaii I'd only seen photos of on Lisa's social media, there had been a series of substantial electronic withdrawals from my retirement account. $42,000. Gone. The transaction notes were vague, coded: asset management fee, investment consultation, account services. Fees I had never authorized, services I had never received. Michael, using the power of attorney I had granted him in my grief and trust, had been systematically siphoning off my nest egg. The nest egg Robert and I had painstakingly built over decades. The betrayal felt physical, a cold fist clenching in my stomach, but there was no time for collapse. Acting purely on instinct, fueled by adrenaline and righteous fury, I instructed Mr. Henderson to immediately transfer the remaining balance, just over $15,000, into a new account solely in my name at a different bank, and to revoke Michael's power of attorney effective immediately. I walked out of the bank clutching the cashier's check for $15,000, my legs trembling, but my resolve hardening into steel. This wasn't just money, it was my independence, my security, and Michael had tried to steal it. Within 48 hours, I had made my decision. Staying in Denver felt untenable. I couldn't bear the thought of running into Michael or Lisa, couldn't face the pitying or judgmental glances of neighbors who might have heard their version of events. I needed distance, anonymity, a clean break. I found a small, furnished, one-bedroom apartment for rent online in Ridgeway, a quiet mountain town about 90 minutes drive southwest, a place Robert and I had visited occasionally on scenic drives. It felt far enough away to be safe, yet close enough to feel like I wasn't completely abandoning my roots. I packed 2 large suitcases with essentials: clothes, toiletries, important documents, my grandmother's sewing box filled with vintage notions, and the precious photograph of my family in happier times. I left a brief, deliberately vague note on the kitchen counter. Needed some time away to think. Will be in touch when I'm ready. Please respect my privacy. Eleanor. I mailed my house keys to Michael's office address with no accompanying message. Then I loaded my sensible sedan and drove away from the life I had known for 40 years, heading towards an uncertain future armed with $15,000, a lifetime of skills, and a core of resilience I hadn't known I possessed. The initial weeks in Ridgeway were daunting. The little apartment felt bare and impersonal compared to my warm, memory-filled house. Loneliness was a constant companion, especially in the evenings. Finding meaningful work at 70 proved nearly impossible. Polite rejections met my tentative inquiries at local fabric shops and community centers. The $15,000, carefully budgeted, seemed to evaporate with alarming speed, covering rent, utilities, groceries, and my essential medications. Doubts gnawed at me during the long, quiet nights. Had I been foolish? Impulsive? Was Michael right? In his own cruel way? Was I simply too old, too frail to manage on my own? Simultaneously, my phone buzzed intermittently with calls and texts from Michael. His initial tone of feigned concern, "Mom, where are you? We're worried sick," quickly shifted to frustration and then outright anger when he discovered I had withdrawn the remaining funds and revoked his power of attorney. "What have you done? That money needs to be managed properly. You're clearly not thinking straight." His threats only solidified my determination to forge my own path, free from his control. Then came an email from my former next-door neighbor, forwarded discreetly. She had seen Michael at my house with a real estate agent, changing the locks, putting up a for sale sign. The reality hit me. Because his name was on the deed, he could legally initiate the sale process without my presence, though he would eventually need my signature or a court order declaring me incompetent to finalize it. Time was running out. Feeling the walls closing in, desperate for connection and a sense of purpose beyond my solitary apartment, I forced myself to venture out. I started attending activities at the Ridgeway Senior Community Center, a lifeline I hadn't realized I needed. There were pottery classes, gentle yoga sessions, guest lectures, and there was Mary Rodriguez. Mary, a sharp, energetic 68-year-old widow with sparkling eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, had recently retired after a long, successful career in marketing for a major cosmetics company. Like me, she was grappling with the transition to retirement, feeling adrift, and seeking something more engaging than bingo and bridge. We bonded quickly over shared frustrations, the feeling of invisibility that often comes with age, the difficulty navigating healthcare bureaucracy, the subtle and sometimes not so subtle condescension we occasionally encountered. It was during one of our coffee chats after a particularly frustrating yoga session where several women struggled with the simple act of changing back into their street clothes due to stiff joints that the spark ignited. I mentioned my own difficulties with buttons and zippers now that my arthritis had worsened, describing how I often had to modify my own clothes with Velcro closures or elastic waistbands. "It's maddening," I confessed. Clothing manufacturers seem to think that once you reach a certain age, you either have the dexterity of a teenager or you should resign yourself to shapeless polyester muumuus. Mary listened intently, her marketing brain instantly kicking into gear. "Eleanor," she said, leaning forward, her eyes gleaming with sudden excitement. "That's not just a complaint. That's a market gap. Adaptive clothing exists, but it's often clinical-looking, expensive, or poorly designed. What if we could create something better? Stylish, comfortable, dignified clothing designed specifically for older adults with mobility issues." The idea resonated deeply. My years of design expertise, my intimate understanding of fabrics and garment construction, combined with Mary's marketing savvy, it felt like a perfect match. Could we actually do it? With my dwindling savings? We could call it gentle threads, Mary mused. Velcro closures instead of fiddly buttons. Soft, non-irritating natural fabrics. Strategically placed snaps for easier dressing. Flattering cuts that accommodate changing body shapes and perhaps conceal medical devices gracefully. Eleanor, this is not just a nice idea. This is a genuine business opportunity. Mary's enthusiasm was infectious, a welcome warmth, chasing away the chill of my recent anxieties. We sat hunched over my small apartment kitchen table, sketching designs on napkins, brainstorming fabric sources, calculating potential costs. The creative energy felt exhilarating, reminding me of my best days teaching, guiding students as their own designs took shape. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of real hope, a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. But reality intruded quickly. My phone buzzed persistently on the table, another string of texts from Michael. The latest one was curt, almost menacing. "Mom, I strongly suggest you come home and we sort this out before things get legally complicated. I'm trying to protect your assets." I silenced the phone with a decisive swipe and looked across the table at Mary, my partner in this nascent, improbable venture. "How quickly do you think we can make this work?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tremor I felt inside. "Because my son is actively trying to sell my house out from under me, and I desperately need a plan B, fast." Working with Mary was like rediscovering a part of myself I thought was long dormant. We threw ourselves into gentle threads with the focused energy of women on a mission. My small apartment living room became our design studio and workshop. I dusted off my portable sewing machine, my fingers surprisingly adept, despite the stiffness, as I drafted patterns and stitched together initial prototypes. A simple wraparound skirt with easy Velcro fasteners, a soft knit cardigan with magnetic closures disguised as decorative buttons, a pair of elegant pull-on trousers with a comfortable, non-binding elastic waist. Mary, meanwhile, leveraged her decades of marketing experience. She conducted informal focus groups at the senior center, gathering invaluable feedback on fit, fabric preferences, and frustrations with existing clothing options. The response was overwhelming, far exceeding our expectations. Woman after woman shared stories similar to mine: the daily struggle with buttons, the embarrassment of ill-fitting clothes, the longing for garments that were both practical and made them feel dignified and attractive. "Finally," one woman exclaimed, trying on our prototype cardigan, "someone understands." Their validation fueled our determination. We pooled our resources. My remaining $15,000 felt like a fortune and terrifyingly inadequate all at once. Mary contributed some of her own savings. We found a small, slightly run-down retail space available for a reasonable rent just off Ridgeway's main street, close enough to the senior center to attract foot traffic. We scoured online auctions and estate sales for used industrial sewing machines, cutting tables, and dress forms. We spent hours sourcing soft, breathable, easy-care fabrics like bamboo jersey, tencel blends, and brushed cotton, negotiating minimum orders with skeptical suppliers unaccustomed to dealing with a startup run by two women in their late 60s and early 70s. The learning curve was steep, the hours were long, and there were moments of doubt, frustration, and near exhaustion. Some nights, lying awake in my quiet apartment, the weight of the financial risk, the uncertainty of success, and the lingering pain of Michael's betrayal threatened to overwhelm me. I would picture his smug, confident face during that Thanksgiving presentation, hear his dismissive tone, and feel a surge of anger. But then I would think of the hopeful faces of the women at the senior center, the satisfying hum of the sewing machine, the tangible feel of the beautiful fabrics under my hands, the camaraderie with Mary, and a different kind of strength would rise within me. Robert's voice would echo in my memory, his quiet confidence in me. "Ellie, you've got more grit than you give yourself credit for. You can figure anything out." Slowly, steadily, gentle threads began to take shape. We opened our little shop with a small, curated collection. Word of mouth spread quickly through the tight-knit Ridgeway senior community. Mary designed simple but effective flyers and placed small ads in the local weekly newspaper. We participated in local craft fairs and farmers markets, setting up a small booth where potential customers could touch the fabrics and see the adaptive features firsthand. Orders started trickling in, then steadily increasing. Mary set up a basic website using an easy drag-and-drop platform and an Etsy shop to handle online sales. Surprised when orders began coming in from neighboring towns, then other states, often accompanied by heartfelt notes of gratitude from daughters buying for aging mothers or from seniors themselves, thrilled to find clothing that finally worked for them. As the business began generating a modest but consistent income, enough to cover our costs and even pay ourselves a small stipend, I knew I needed professional financial advice, untainted by familial ties. I made an appointment with Sharon Davis, a volunteer financial counselor at the senior center, known for her sharp mind and compassionate approach. Sharon, a semi-retired financial planner in her early 60s, listened patiently as I recounted the story of Michael's financial management and my subsequent discoveries. She wasn't shocked. Sadly, she'd heard variations of this story before. Together, we meticulously went through the bank statements I had obtained, the power of attorney documents I had signed, and the confusing paperwork related to the joint tenancy on my house deed. Sharon's expertise revealed the full, calculated extent of Michael's malfeasance. It wasn't just the $42,000 directly withdrawn. She identified patterns suggesting he might have also used my accounts for smaller personal expenses disguised as household costs before Robert died. More critically, she confirmed my fear about the house title. The way Michael had structured the joint tenancy gave him significant power to force a sale, especially if he could argue I was no longer capable of managing my affairs, a narrative his Thanksgiving performance seemed designed to establish. The situation was more precarious than I had realized. "Eleanor," Sharon said gently but firmly, "this isn't just mismanagement. This is textbook elder financial abuse. It's illegal, and you have recourse." She immediately connected me with Thomas Green, a highly respected local attorney specializing in elder law and probate litigation. My meeting with Thomas Green was sobering but empowering. He reviewed the evidence Sharon and I had compiled, the bank records, the power of attorney revocation, copies of Michael's increasingly demanding emails and texts, even my neighbor's email about the for sale sign. "We can build a very strong case for financial exploitation and undue influence," Thomas stated calmly, his demeanor professional yet reassuring. He explained the legal process, the potential outcomes. We could file a civil suit to recover the stolen funds and petition the court to invalidate the joint tenancy due to the circumstances under which it was created. We could also file a report with Adult Protective Services and the district attorney's office, potentially leading to criminal charges against Michael. The thought of pursuing criminal action against my own son made me feel physically ill. But Eleanor, Thomas leaned forward, his gaze direct. Before we proceed, I need to understand what is most important to you right now. Is it seeing Michael face legal consequences, perhaps even criminal charges? Or is it primarily about recovering your financial losses and securing clear title to your home, regaining your independence? I looked out the window of his quiet, book-lined office. Across the street, I could see the cheerful blue awning of Gentle Threads. Mary was inside chatting animatedly with a customer who was holding up one of our new tunic designs. I thought about the life I was building here, the community I had found, the sense of purpose that filled my days. "I want my life back, Mr. Green," I said, my voice stronger, clearer than I felt just moments before. "I want what was taken from me restored. And I want Michael to understand unequivocally that I am not a burden to be managed or disposed of. I am the woman who taught him how to tie his shoes, who cheered loudest at his graduations, and who deserves respect, not exploitation." Thomas nodded slowly, a faint smile touching his lips. "All right then, Eleanor. Let's prepare our strategy. Because according to the listing information I pulled this morning, your son has an open house scheduled for your Denver property in 2 weeks, and he's aggressively pushing for a quick closing within 30 days. We need to be ready when he inevitably discovers you're not quite the frail, helpless mother he seems to believe you are." The discovery came sooner than any of us anticipated, and not through legal channels or angry phone calls, but through the unassuming pages of the Ridgeway Weekly Herald. It was a busy Saturday morning at Gentle Threads. Our small shop was bustling with customers, and I was in the back room leading a small, informal workshop demonstrating simple techniques for adapting existing clothing for people with arthritis, a free service we had started offering once a month. Suddenly, Mary burst through the curtain, separating the workshop space from the retail floor, her eyes wide, waving the latest edition of the Herald. "Eleanor, look, page 3, business section," she exclaimed, breathless. There it was, a modest 2-column article headlined, "Local Seniors Stitch Success with Gentle Threads." It featured a flattering photo of Mary and me standing proudly amidst bolts of colorful fabric and described our business, focusing on how we identified a niche market and built a thriving enterprise from scratch. The reporter, a regular customer named Brenda, who apparently wrote freelance pieces for the paper, had interviewed us briefly the week before, but we hadn't expected such prominent placement. It praised our ingenuity and highlighted my background, mentioning my name, Eleanor Winters, and my age, 70, as an inspiring example of late-life entrepreneurship. My heart did a complicated flip-flop, a mix of pride and sudden dread. Before I could fully process the implications, my personal cell phone, usually quiet during shop hours, began ringing insistently from my handbag. Caller ID, Michael. I exchanged a wide-eyed look with Mary. It seemed the local news in Ridgeway had reached Denver faster than a speeding bullet. Stepping into the tiny back office, I answered hesitantly. "Mom." Michael's voice was tight, strained, vibrating with barely suppressed fury. "We need to talk. Now. I just saw something. I'm on my way down there. Don't go anywhere." The line went dead. He must have seen the article online or had it forwarded by someone. The carefully prepared timeline Thomas and I had discussed just evaporated. The confrontation was happening today. Less than 90 minutes later, Michael's sleek, dark gray SUV screeched to a halt directly in front of the shop, taking up 2 parking spaces. He emerged clutching a ridiculously large bouquet of cellophane-wrapped roses, his face arranged in an expression of strained, solicitous concern that didn't quite reach his eyes. He strode into the crowded shop, scanning the room until he located me helping a customer near the cash register. "Mom!" he exclaimed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Thank God I found you. I've been worried sick. Why didn't you tell me where you were? Are you all right? You look thin." He attempted to steer me towards the door, thrusting the flowers at me. "Come on, let's go somewhere quiet and talk. We need to sort things out. You need proper care." I stood my ground, refusing the flowers. "Michael," I said, keeping my voice low but firm, aware of the curious glances from customers. "I am perfectly fine. And I am rather busy right now." His facade crumbled instantly, replaced by undisguised anger. "Busy? Mom, what is this place? What are you doing playing shopkeeper in this backwater town? I saw that ridiculous article. You should be resting, taking care of yourself, not running some hobby business." His voice rose. "I've been trying to manage your affairs, protect your assets, and you disappear and start this nonsense." He gestured dismissively around the shop, at the carefully arranged displays, the bolts of beautiful fabric, the humming sewing machines in the back. "Look, I found a buyer for the house. A cash offer, closing quickly. We need you back in Denver to sign the papers. This charade has gone on long enough." He stepped closer, lowering his voice menacingly. "Don't make me take legal steps, Mom. For your own good. Everyone knows your health isn't what it used to be." The threat hung in the air, ugly and explicit. Mary, anticipating this, had discreetly slipped into the back office moments earlier to call Thomas Green, letting him know the confrontation was underway exactly as we had planned for, albeit accelerated. Taking a deep breath, channeling a calm I didn't entirely feel, I met Michael's furious gaze. "Actually, Michael," I said, my voice steady, "perhaps we should discuss this privately. Why don't you come into my office?" He looked momentarily surprised by my acquiescence, then suspicious, but followed me through the curtain into the small, cluttered back office. Waiting for him, seated calmly behind my modest desk, was Thomas Green, looking impeccably professional in his suit and tie. On the desk in front of him lay two neatly arranged stacks of documents. Michael stopped short, his eyes narrowing as he recognized Thomas from a brief contentious probate meeting years ago after Robert's death. "Mr. Winters," Thomas said politely, gesturing to the empty chair opposite him. "Please, have a seat. Your mother and I have some matters to discuss with you." Thomas wasted no time. He calmly, methodically laid out the evidence. The bank statements detailing the unauthorized withdrawals totaling $42,000. The timing coinciding with Michael's major purchases, the questionable nature of the joint tenancy agreement signed during my period of acute grief, copies of his emails pressuring me about my finances and competence. He explained the legal definition of elder financial abuse and undue influence, outlining the potential civil and criminal consequences, including mandatory reporting to financial regulatory bodies, which could severely impact Michael's career. Michael initially blustered, attempting indignant denials. "This is outrageous. I was managing her money. Those were legitimate fees. I acted in her best interests." Then he tried appeals to emotion, turning to me. "Mom, tell him this is a misunderstanding. You know I would never hurt you." I remained silent, meeting his desperate gaze with quiet resolve. Thomas simply pushed the two stacks of documents forward. "Mr. Winters, you have two options before you today. Option A," he tapped the thicker stack, "is a formal civil complaint detailing claims of financial exploitation, conversion, breach of fiduciary duty, and undue influence, which I am prepared to file with the court this afternoon. It also includes reporting this matter to the appropriate authorities. Option B," he indicated the slimmer stack, "is a settlement agreement. It requires you to immediately repay the $42,000 documented as improperly withdrawn, plus interest calculated at the statutory rate. It also requires you to relinquish, fully and irrevocably, any and all claim to your mother's Denver property by signing a quitclaim deed effective immediately. You choose. The color drained from Michael's face as the reality of his situation, the corner he had backed himself into, became starkly clear. The bluster evaporated, replaced by a sullen, resentful silence. He stared at the documents, then at me, then back at Thomas. Finally, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He picked up a pen with a trembling hand and reached for the settlement agreement. As I watched him sign away his claim to my home and agree to return the money he had stolen, I felt a complex swirl of emotions. A profound sadness for the son I had lost, a deep weariness from the battle, but overriding it all, a quiet, steady sense of vindication. Not triumph, but justice. Restorative justice. I had reclaimed what was mine. Michael shoved the signed papers across the desk without a word, refused to meet my eyes, and stormed out of the office, slamming the shop door behind him. His expensive SUV roared away from the curb, leaving behind only the scent of exhaust fumes and the lingering bitterness of his defeat. After Michael left, the engine of his car fading into the distance like a final, angry growl, Mary quietly came into the office and placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Are you all right, Eleanor?" she asked softly, her usual buoyant energy subdued. I looked around my small, functional office, the sketches pinned to the wall, the swatches of soft fabric draped over a chair, the hum of the sewing machine from the workshop next door, where part-time seamstresses, women my own age finding purpose and income, were busy fulfilling orders. I thought of the house in Denver, my house, now unequivocally mine again. I thought of the thriving little business Mary and I had built from nothing but an idea and sheer determination. I thought of the supportive community I had found here in Ridgeway. "Yes, Mary," I said, turning to her with a smile that felt genuine, unforced. "I believe I am more than all right. I believe I am free." What neither Mary nor I knew then was that the story of Gentle Threads and my own third act was far from over. A phone call the following week from a national distributor specializing in products for seniors, who had seen our feature in an online AARP newsletter Mary had managed to get us into, would open doors we hadn't even known existed, presenting opportunities and challenges that would change everything once again. A year. It's astonishing how much life can pivot in just 1 year. 12 months after that devastating Thanksgiving dinner, where I was summarily dismissed as a liability, I sat in the newly expanded offices of Gentle Threads LLC, reviewing fabric samples for our upcoming spring collection. From a 2-woman operation fueled by desperation and $15,000, we had grown into a recognized brand in the adaptive clothing market. We now employed 12 part-time staff members, mostly skilled seamstresses over 60, who had struggled to find work elsewhere. And our comfortable, stylish designs were being sold not just online, but through specialized medical supply stores and curated boutiques across the country, thanks to that unexpected distribution deal. The financial burden was now running a profitable small business, providing jobs, and meeting a real need in the community. The irony was not lost on me. The pain inflicted by Michael's words and actions hadn't vanished entirely. Some scars remain, reminders of the betrayal. But it no longer defined my present or dictated my future. Instead, that wound had somehow become the catalyst for discovering a strength, a purpose, and a sense of self-worth I hadn't fully realized even during my fulfilling teaching career. Michael upheld his end of the agreement. The $42,000 plus interest appeared in my account within the stipulated time frame. The quitclaim deed arrived via registered mail shortly after. Our communication since then had been minimal, strained, consisting mostly of terse emails regarding logistical details. The comfortable mother-son relationship we once shared felt irreparably damaged, perhaps beyond mending. Yet he was still my son. After much soul-searching, I decided to write him a letter. Not an angry diatribe, not a rehashing of grievances, but a quiet statement of boundaries. I told him I loved him, the son I remembered raising, but that the trust between us had been profoundly broken. I explained that if we were to have any relationship moving forward, it needed to be built on a foundation of mutual respect, honesty, and his recognition of me not as a dependent child needing management, but as an independent adult, his mother, who deserved courtesy and autonomy. I suggested we could meet occasionally, perhaps for coffee in a neutral location, on equal footing. I didn't know if he would accept, or if the chasm was simply too wide, but I needed to articulate the terms of any possible future connection. Separately, working with Thomas Green, I quietly established modest 529 college savings plans for my grandchildren, Emma and Ryan, funded directly from the business profits, ensuring that regardless of the state of my relationship with their parents, my love and support for them could continue in a tangible way. One Saturday afternoon a few months later, during one of our adaptive clothing workshops, a hesitant face peeked around the workshop door. It was Emma, now 16, looking older, more serious. She had taken 2 buses from Denver to get here. "Grandma," she whispered, her eyes wide. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" In the quiet of my office, she told me she had found the Gentle Threads website online after hearing snippets of angry conversations between her parents about my stubbornness and that ridiculous clothing thing. Intrigued, she had explored further, reading the articles, looking at the designs. "It's amazing, Grandma," she said, her voice filled with an admiration that warmed my heart. "What you've built here." Then shyly, she confessed, I want to learn how to sew properly, like you used to teach. And maybe I could help with design sometimes? Dad and Mom don't know I'm here," she added quickly. "But I really miss you, and I think what you're doing is really important." Tears welled in my eyes, tears of joy this time, as I hugged my granddaughter close. Michael might have chosen a path away from me, but my legacy, the skills I cherished, the creativity I nurtured, the resilient spirit I possessed, would find a way to continue, stitched into the next generation through Emma's eager hands. Life in Ridgeway settled into a fulfilling rhythm. Gentle Threads continued to grow, demanding more of my time, but also bringing immense satisfaction. We expanded our product line to include cleverly designed accessories for people with limited mobility, and even partnered with an occupational therapist to develop ergonomic household items. My house in Denver, fully mine again, remained a symbol of my reclaimed independence, though I chose to stay in my comfortable Ridgeway apartment, closer to the business and the community I now called home. I had built a strong network of friends, Mary, Sharon, women from the senior center, fellow small business owners. I even began tentatively dating George, a kind, widowed history professor I met at a town hall meeting, enjoying the simple pleasures of shared meals and stimulating conversation. I often think back to that awful Thanksgiving dinner, the moment my world seemed to crumble. Michael's words, intended to diminish me, to label me a financial burden, hang in my memory not as an insult, but as an unintentional, life-altering gift. They jolted me awake from a passive acceptance of aging, forcing me to confront the reality that my value wasn't tied to my utility to others, nor did it diminish with the years. That moment didn't signify an ending, it forced a beginning. It compelled me to recognize that my later years weren't a time for quiet retreat, but an opportunity for bold expansion, for reinvention, for proving that experience and wisdom are assets, not liabilities. Every week, women, and sometimes men, come into Gentle Threads, sharing their stories, their frustrations with clothing that doesn't fit their bodies or their lives anymore. I see the flicker of recognition, then relief in their eyes when they realize someone is finally listening, designing for them, acknowledging their needs, validating their presence in a world often obsessed with youth. It's in those moments I feel the deepest satisfaction. Our age is not a burden. It is a testament to survival, to resilience, to lives lived. Every line on our faces tells a story. Every ache in our joints marks battles fought and journeys taken. And every skill honed over decades, every lesson learned through trial and error, every ounce of wisdom accumulated, these are the invaluable threads we can still weave into the fabric of the world, if only the world is wise enough and respectful enough to let us. As for Michael, the path to reconciliation remains uncertain. Hope persists, as it often does in a mother's heart, but it is tempered by realism. Even if that particular seam remains torn, I have found peace. Because I know the truth that my son momentarily forgot, the truth I had to reclaim for myself. I am not a number on a balance sheet, nor a problem to be solved. I am Eleanor Winters, mother, grandmother, teacher, designer, friend, entrepreneur. And my story is still being written, one stitch, one success, one day at a time. I am certainly not ready to be put away. Thank you for listening to my story today. If you or someone you care about has ever been made to feel like a burden simply because of age or changing circumstances, please remember that your intrinsic value is non-negotiable. Your experience matters. Your story matters. Hit that like button if my journey resonated with you, and please subscribe to our channel for more stories celebrating strength, dignity, and reinvention at every stage of life. Please share in the comments if you have faced similar challenges or found unexpected pathways forward. Your voice is important. I am Eleanor Winters, and I look forward to sharing another story with you soon. Goodbye for now.